For more on the BRICS summit in South Africa, Dhruva Jaishankar joins us live from Boston. He's a transatlantic fellow with the Asia program of the German Marshall Fund here in the United States. I wanted to ask you, sir, there's a lot of talk about this, this development fund that's being set up by the different BRICS countries. And I just want to ask you, who stands to gain the most out of the BRIC countries from this development fund?
I think the development fund is actually something that all the countries have wanted. I mean, part of the reasons the BRICS coalition actually came together is really because of a common concern about lack of representation in the Bretton Woods institutions, the World Bank and the IMF particularly. So in some ways, this is something that all the countries are in principle in agreement on, and we saw today an announcement from the South African finance minister that they'd agreed in principle to establish this. The details, of course, are somewhat still subject to some disagreement, it looks like. And it seems as if the finance ministers will continue discussing it next month on the sidelines of the G20 meeting, next month's G20 meeting. So it looks like, in terms of contributions, how much each country will contribute to it, there still is some sort of disagreement, and some of the details need to be ironed out.
As you look at the 5 BRIC countries, it used to be 4, now it's 5. What's the greatest challenge they face right now in terms of the economy, the country? There's so much expectation from the rest of the world that this group of 5 is going to help drive growth going forward over the next decade. What's ahead for them?
Absolutely. All 5 countries are growing much faster. I mean, if you look in a comparative context, I mean, the U.S. economy still hasn't come back to full steam. The euro crisis still seems to be embroiling Europe. Japan's economy still is not growing at that pace. So comparatively speaking, all 5 of these economies are doing quite well in relative terms. All 5 are also facing certain problems, slowing growth. One of the challenges that they will face both amongst themselves as well is all have very different profiles. China's is very unusual in having a sort of export-driven economic model of growth. Russia's has been quite energy dependent. India's has been very heavy on services. And Brazil's are very heavy on agricultural growth.
So what you're saying is that the challenges facing each of them are a little bit different because of their economic
different
model.
Exactly, and it'll be it's unclear whether they'll all be able to provide a similar solution, or even be able to share lessons amongst themselves as to how to overcome slowing economic growth.
But don't they have at least one thing in common? And that's to deal with inflation. I mean, the rest of the world's dealing with inflation. We saw commodity prices rise. A lot of people were saying this would affect in a overly way a lot of the developing countries, because for a lot of them, they do import a significant amount of their energy goods.
Absolutely. Inflation is one issue that they're all wrestling with in various ways. Actually, inequality is another one that they're having to do. I mean, how much to focus on welfare. But again, because of very different models and also just different stages of development. I mean, in many cases, India, where I'm from, is a country that per capita income is significantly behind. Russia and Brazil tend to are ahead, and China's is fast growing, is much faster growing. So all are in different stages of their development as well. Brazil and Russia, to some degree, have industrialized a little bit earlier. So it's unclear whether they can all have a common approach to dealing with.
Dhruva, I've got one last question for you. Sure. They're meeting down there in South Africa. They're talking about the potentially development bank model. What else needs to be done besides just financing? Is there something that the 5 of them have in common that they need to address? Is it financial reforms? Is it regulation? Is it dealing with the rest of the world? What else needs to be done, and what are they talking about there?
Well, I mean, historically speaking, and it looks like it's continued, there are really 5 issues on the agenda. One of them is development, and that you see that. One is global governance, which, again, the bank the development bank seems to be addressing. The other issues are actually energy and climate. One is diplomatic coordination, particularly with the Middle East. And lastly, to some degree, is sort of intra-BRIC economic relations, and you saw that again with the China-Brazil agreement on the sidelines.
All right. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you very much.